I have been watching Disney movies for over a decade. I definitely remember watching a show called Mickey Mouse Clubhouse in my earlier years. I was there for Disney during the days of their own streaming service called Disney Plus. And there are several of their movies I saw in theaters, including Frozen 2. And I got to see Avengers Endgame in theaters. Needless to say, I have seen a lot. But never did I ever picture where we are right now, because just recently, The Little Mermaid, one of the best classic movies that they have put out before their computer animation era, went down a path I never could have imagined, even in my worst nightmares. There were some people who were excited for this Little Mermaid remake, but others, not so much. Most of us saw a familiar pattern between these Disney live-action remakes, that being the padding of the runtime and making it so unbearably lifeless, with the exception of Cruella, years ago. This fear was then confirmed for The Little Mermaid. What I expected was for the movie to be released in a mediocre best and frustrating at the worst state, and for the film to get hated. What I never could have imagined is an absolutely horrifying, close to overwhelming dislike, 2.3 out of 10, user score and Metacritic. And to make matters worse, there are even Halle Bailey fans who denounced this remake. Never have I ever seen a theatrical Disney movie get this level of negative reception. I know I said I wasn't going to see this movie, but considering the appalling state it released in, it wasn't a matter of if I should rant on it. It was a matter of when. Let me get this straight. Not all Disney live-action remakes are bad. Films like The Jungle Book from 2016, Aladdin from 2019, yes, say what you will about the Aladdin live-action remake, but I actually enjoyed that one, albeit not as much as the animated one, Beauty and the Beast from 2017, Pete's Dragon from 2016, Cinderella from 2015, and yes, even Cruella were excellent films. Sure, there were stinkers like Dumbo from 2019, but the moment where Disney really started to mess up with their live-action remakes was with The Lion King from 2019, if you can even call it live-action, which completely butchered everything that made the animated Lion King movie so good in the first place, causing Disney live-action remakes to go downhill, with Cruella being the only good Disney live-action remake released after The Lion King 2019. Also, Disney lied about The Lion King 2019. They literally said it was a live-action remake. It was even marketed as one too, but in reality, it could not be any further from the truth. Disney's 2019 Lion King remake turned out to be a photorealistic computer-animated movie. And not a good one at that either, and it shows, and it also completely throws all the promotion for the remake out the window, since Disney constantly advertised the computer-animated Lion King remake as a live-action movie. Disney's live-action Pinocchio remake was absolutely atrocious for many reasons, even in the scene where Pinocchio hatched literal shit. They even gave the Disney death to Ghetto instead of Pinocchio himself, which literally defeats the entire purpose of Pinocchio's character arc in the animated Disney movie released all the way back in 1940 and new in 2020, while not really the worst of the bad live-action remakes, is inconsistent, especially since it doesn't even know what it wants to be, between an accurate version of the story or a story similar to the original animated movie that this live-action Mulan remake is a make-up. Considering how awful most of Disney's recent live-action remakes were, I had absolutely zero hopes for this Little Mermaid remake. Considering that the trailers looked overall lifeless, and especially since the promotion had pretty ugly-looking CGI, which would later be present in the actual movie. But the main question I have been having since this movie was announced was, did The Little Mermaid actually have a live-action remake before Disney decided to take matters into their own hands? The answer is a lot more complicated than you would expect. The Little Mermaid was first introduced as a literary fairy tale written by the Danish author Hans Christian Andersen, first published in 1837 as part of a collection of fairy tales for children. The story follows the journey of a young mermaid who is willing to give up her life in the sea as a mermaid to gain a human soul. Back in 1976, 13 years before Disney took matters of The Little Mermaid into their own hands with the animated classic, The Little Mermaid had two live-action films released in Czech and Russia. There was also a Little Mermaid movie released in 2016 by Roxy Bloom and Matt Martin, although that version of The Little Mermaid is not what you initially expect. And then there's the 2018 Little Mermaid movie made by Blake Harris and Chris Bouchard. And nobody even bothers to talk about that one. Probably because I haven't seen that many people who know its overall existence. Or maybe because it's so bad, it has been forgotten about within less than a year, we're not sure yet. After watching Disney's live-action Little Mermaid remake, it has come to my attention that the movie is a poor unfortunate disaster. I couldn't even think of a theatrical movie released in 2023 that turned out to be as horrible as this. But you might be wondering, what on earth is causing me to hate this specific film? Before I explain, first, let's go over the positives, or should I say, this film's redeeming qualities, shall we? The original Little Mermaid had some pretty good songs, very likable characters, and adorable chemistry between Ariel and Eric. That's part of what made the original so good in the first place. Where this live-action remake shines the most is with Prince Eric. Despite his major problem, which we'll get to later, he gets better characterization here. In the original film, he was portrayed as a love interest. Not to mention, the chemistry between Eric and Ariel was just adorable. And in the remake, it's basically the same, except in the remake, he wants to explore the ocean, just like how Ariel wants to be on land. Even though it's just a copied and pasted version of Ariel, it's one of the few changes Disney made to their character that made it better. This remake still retains the chemistry in the original film, but gave Prince Eric surprisingly better characterization. Where Prince Eric in this movie truly shined the most is with his song, known as Wild Uncharted Waters, one of the new songs in this remake. It also helps that this song is also helped by Halle Bailey's backing. I know this lies more in the soundtrack aspect, but it's worth mentioning. And there's this one shot in the movie of Prince Eric wearing a fedora. And I gotta be honest, Prince Eric looks really snazzy in that fedora. And it really shows, and this isn't too surprising, especially considering there was this movie called Postcards from London, which Jonah Hauer-King is also in which there is a shot where his character, David, pretty much wears a fedora, and it looks great as well. Overall, for the most part, this movie does a pretty good job at developing Ariel and Eric's relationship even further, and even if it were Harry Styles being the voice of Prince Eric instead of Jonah Hauer-King, I still would have loved Prince Eric in this movie regardless. And did I mention the soundtrack? Oh yes. Despite a Quidfinaz nasally song, which we'll get to later, the soundtrack, for the most part, is pretty good. And while there are some new songs, the major standouts in the soundtrack were Part of Your World and the previously mentioned Wild Uncharted Waters. Although I gotta admit, it was a big missed opportunity not including Daughters of Tribe and Les Persons. But regardless, the soundtrack still stays as decent as ever. But the only thing truly holding this soundtrack back is one specific song we'll get to later. But unfortunately, this is where the positives come to an abrupt end, because I have yet to cover the more negative side of the movie. That being, the many aspects of the movie that completely ruined it.
Is this what you came for?
Now let's get Ariel out of her world, shall we? As with most modern Disney live-action remakes, it copies everything from its original material beat by beat with barely anything new added. There's no reason to watch this film if the original is still on Disney Plus and still exists. It also increases the original film's runtime from 83 minutes to 135 minutes just to develop the relationship of Ariel and Eric much more, which thankfully, it does a good job at, but that's pretty much the runtime's only saving grace. Also, this movie extended from 83 minutes to 135 minutes. And this likely would have been acceptable if it was marketed as an extended cut of The Little Mermaid, similar to how Justice League got an extended cut made by Zack Snyder that extended the runtime from 2 hours to straight up 4 hours. Also, unlike Zack Snyder's Justice League, Disney's live-action Little Mermaid remake doesn't exactly do jack shit to improve from the original aside from the relationship between Eric and Ariel. And when it did do something different from the original aside from what I mentioned before, it's either only the runtime, which really came down to padding, or something really bad. And after seeing the whole movie, I was just at a loss for words. And the acting, while indeed good, it's only for most of the singing aspect. The rest of the acting, aside from Melissa McCarthy as Ursula and Jonah Hauer-King as Prince Eric, is extremely piss-poor compared to the original Little Mermaid movie. But one particular aspect of the acting that really brought fuel to the flame was the situation surrounding Halle Bailey's casting as Ariel. Don't get me wrong, I'm fine with a black Ariel. But what really makes this a problem is how it completely overshadows the original, even despite the overall film's problems. It's also worth bringing up that people found her to be a black woman playing a sea creature who is described by Hans Christian Andersen as her skin was as clear and delicate as a rose leaf, and her eyes as blue as the deepest sea. Although this lies more in the controversy surrounding Halle Bailey, it's worth bringing up. It's also worth noting that while she does have a great performance and an amazing singing voice and sounds overall similar to Jodie Benson, her performance isn't as amazing as Benson's from the original 1989 film, and I feel like Halle Bailey was only casted as Ariel because of her singing. However, Halle Bailey isn't the real problem when it comes to the casting. especially since I still have yet to discuss the rest of the acting. The airfare doesn't even sound angry enough to be an intimidating King Triton, making it much harder to take his character seriously. Daphne Diggs' Sebastian, while not too bad, is incredibly hit or miss. Same goes for Jacob Tremblay's Flounder. However, the biggest problem with the acting by far is with Aquafina Scuttle. Wait, a female person voicing a male character? That's not something I haven't seen before. I mean, Bowser Jr., I can definitely understand why he needed to be voiced by a female actress, but why Scuttle? Maybe it's the fact that Scuttle is apparently only voiced by a female for some sort of flashback scene from when he was younger, and then he's voiced by a male actor for the rest of the movie. Let me just think for a second about, wait just a minute. What is this? In this live-action remake, Scuttle is apparently changed from a male to a female. Okay, I can understand why there needed to be a black Ariel. But what I will never understand is why Scuttle apparently needed to be changed from a male to a female. And this is something that only a gender-bent fanfiction would do. And not only that, but instead of being a seagull, Scuttle is depicted as a gown. And the worst part about Scuttle in this movie as a whole is with her song known as Scuttlebutt. This song is yet again another song trying to be hip and relevant to modern times, which is a major problem with most modern movies nowadays. And not to mention, a Hamilton-style rap also feels completely out of place for The Little Mermaid. And not to mention, this song is easily unbearable to hear too. This is easily so unbearable to listen to the point where this song is easily on par with Dark Horse by Katy Perry, one of the worst songs ever made. And to make matters even worse, Scuttle didn't even sing in the original movie. If you want a proper explanation of why Scuttle didn't sing and how the scene compares to the original Little Mermaid movie, here's how it's described through many sentences. If you've seen the original Little Mermaid, you know that the suspense really ramps up in its last 20 minutes. That final act is introduced when Scuttle flies in through the window of Ariel's room in Prince Eric's palace to tell the mermaid turned human that her paramount has decided to propose. This leads to Ariel finding out that the sea witch, Ursula, has turned herself human to put a love spell on Eric and stop Ariel from receiving her true love's kiss, which would keep the mermaid a human forever, foiling Ursula's bigger plans. Scuttle's entire announcement takes all 20 seconds in the animated film. It's an effective transition because the viewer's hopes for Ariel are quickly heightened before being dashed just as rapidly when we find out that Eric isn't proposing to our protagonist. In the live-action remake, which is already way too distended at a whopping 135 minutes, this scene is packed to seemingly endless bloat. Its efficacy dashed away by Aquafina's voice spitting Rant's irritating lyrics. The song begins unassumingly pleasant, with a sort of Animal Crossing-esque lilting beat. That is, before Aquafina comes crashing into the track, as Scuttle does in the movie, with her raspy voice commanding us, "Wake up! Wake up! Wake up!" There are people out there who already have enough problems getting out of bed in the morning. They don't need the brains to conjure Aquafina's gravelly demand the second the alarm goes off. She then proceeds to ask us if we've heard the scuttlebutt. There's a reason the seagull doesn't sing, and it's because his jumbled bird brain doesn't neatly transcribe itself to lyrical music. Why Miranda decided to give this flying piece of poultry a rap is entirely outside the realm of logical human comprehension. Granted, Aquafina got her start doing comedy raps, but the Nicki Minaj meets Twister-style bars of Scuttle's rap fly so rapidly that it shakes the audience out of the story entirely. In fact, watching the actual movie in the theater is no better. A CGI bird flocking about, trying to explain to Ariel and Sebastian the crab what's going down. I feel sorry for poor Bailey, who was surely a trooper on set for how many times she probably had to listen to this song. If I were her, I would have bent on my knees for a Disney sponsor, lobotomy, courtesy at King Triton's scepter, after the 5th take. And yes, this song was an absolute detriment to my experience. And it really gives me a strong feeling that they casted Aquafina to play the role of Scuttle and changed him from a male to a female so they could do this, rather than so Scuttle could be underwater, because the Scuttlebutt song is definitely what it feels like. And I will absolutely never understand how anyone working on this movie thought that this was a good idea. If you want a female version of a male character, there's a right way to do it. Just take a look at the 2 Spider-Verse movies, as both movies feature alternate versions have Spider-Man, both male and female. While female Spider-People like Spider-Gwen are featured in the movie, the male Spider-Men are still prominent in the movie. But guess what this live-action Little Mermaid remake Scuttle is? Only a female. That's right. Scuttle's gender was solely changed from a male to a female in this remake. And normally, it would work if put into the right hands. But no, somehow this was put into the wrong hands. This is not how you change your character's gender. But okay, let's say you want to see Scuttle meeting an alternate dimension version of him, like in the two Spider-Verse movies, with the most prominent example being Across the Spider-Verse. Well, guess what? Nope. Disney apparently is saying fuck you to the audience who wanted the male Scuttle in the movie, and said, here's your Scuttle in the movie. Have fun with it. But that isn't even the worst of the casting. The worst of the casting is how Disney casting a porn star who goes by the name of Stefano Tomatini, who literally produced adult films under the moniker of Dante Ferrari, in a fucking kids movie, as a goddamn merman. I really wish I was joking, but it turns out I'm not. Even if this was an accident, it still should never have happened in the first place. And what makes this an even bigger problem is how they didn't even think about the circumstances before casting him in the movie as a fucking merman. I mean, think about it. Once kids get done watching the movie, once they find out about this actor voicing the merman, they could eventually think they want to learn more about him, and then when they search him up, NSFW results will pop up, and more children will be exposed to pornography, which is a major problem and extremely concerning for the future of the kids. Accident or not, this is absolutely unacceptable. Granted, this isn't as worthy of imprisonment as the entirety of Cuties. Oh my god, don't even get me started on the film. But despite this, I just cannot believe that Disney had the audacity to hire a porn star for a fucking kids movie. However, this is only covering the acting and the casting, because I have yet to cover the rest of this movie's major issues. The visuals, while they look somewhat good depending on your view, pale in comparison to the animated original. This is not helped by the limitations of live action, which makes everything look lifeless and slow rather than the fast-paced scenery of the original. But what really makes the visuals a problem is that a good chunk of the scenes are way too dark to notice what's going on, to the point where the lighting completely ruins it, and this is especially noticeable in the climax of the film. Saying that the CGI looks similar to the CGI for Boots and Swiper in Dora and the Lost City of Gold is not true. Because at least with Dora and the Lost City of Gold, the CGI for Boots and Swiper at least have a cartoony look that resembles the Dora the Explorer TV series while also managing to look realistic. The CGI for the Little Mermaid live-action remake just looks awful to the point where one could clearly tell that it's CGI. This isn't the first time that a Disney movie had terrible CGI. If you take a look at The Wild, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. First of all, every single animal companion doesn't resemble their original designs, because Sebastian's design looks more like a live-action version of Mr. Krabs, especially in the eyes, and it shows. Flounder seems not to have any soul, and Scuttle was apparently changed from a seagull into a northern gank, as explained before. Speaking of Scuttle, the reason for Scuttle's change was so that she can be in the underwater scenes, but even then, she was only in one with barely any speaking time. But there's more. Other uses of CGI aren't much better. In particular, a scene included in the trailer and is known as the under the sea part, where Ariel makes a puffer fish inflate itself by touching it, is very cheaply animated and just ruins it. If you were to tell me that Disney's live-action Little Mermaid remake is actually a rip-off of the original, I'd be inclined to agree with you. Because despite being made by Disney, this movie doesn't even resemble a Disney movie. Say what you will about Peter Pan and Wendy, but despite how bad it really is, there's no denying that's a Disney movie. But this live-action Little Mermaid remake somehow looks like a live-action Little Mermaid bootleg, which isn't exactly new to Disney, thanks to stuff like the Ice Age Adventures of Fuck Wild. Actually, I take that back. Even bootlegs have more passion put into them. The fact that a Little Mermaid knockoff, made by the Asylum, a company known for its mockbuster movies, has more passion put into it than a live-action remake made by Disney, goes to showcase how downhill they have become. Disney is one of the biggest movie studios in the world. Bigger than 21st Century Fox. Bigger than Legendary Entertainment. Hell, even bigger than Paramount. Yet Disney put out a movie with CGI that looks like the movie would be released in the 2000s decade. Actually, never mind. Because I've seen 2000s decade movies that have better CGI. Even the biggest pile of shit for a video game movie, known as the Mario movie from 1993, manages to look better. And what's even more concerning is the fact that even horror movies like Evil Dead Rise, one of the best horror movies ever made, looks so much better in comparison. That's right. A horror movie from 2023, in which horror movies are meant to be terrifying, somehow looks better than a family-friendly live-action remake of an animated movie, and yet Evil Dead Rise used very little CGI. That's right. A horror movie that uses very little CGI looks so much better than a live-action remake made by Disney in freaking 2023. And to make matters worse, this live-action Little Mermaid remake isn't some independent movie. This is an actual movie made by Disney. Good CGI won't make a good film alone, but if done right, they can enhance a modern one greatly. Would Avatar: The Way of Water be as successful and as excellent, if not for the impressive CGI? And what is one of the main reasons why many people, including myself, absolutely love Spider-Man across the Spider-Verse? Quality absolutely does matter. And considering Disney's live-action Little Mermaid remake CGI looks like if the 1993 Mario movie and Dragon Ball Evolution had a baby, it's yet again another detriment to the movie. And if you're actually gonna say, Slash, why are you bashing on the CGI for the Little Mermaid live-action remake, yet like Hoodwinked, despite also having back CGI? The only difference is that Hoodwinked came out in fucking 2005, while the Little Mermaid live-action remake came out in 2023. And also, when it comes to CGI, despite having back CGI that didn't exactly age well, I'm giving Hoodwinked a free pass, as it was one of the first computer-animated movies to be completely independently funded without the backing of any studio. I will admit, the sequel, Hoodwinked 2. Hook vs. Sequel is not just a bad sequel, but a terrible sequel. But even then, that sequel is still titanic compared to this gigantic piece of shit poorly done CGI for the Little Mermaid live-action remake. We've seen time and time again that there can still be beautiful looking live-action movies. Stuff like Avatar: The Way of Water, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and even Oppenheimer, despite Oppenheimer having little to no CGI, are major examples of this. Even Avengers Endgame, a movie that came out early 4 years ago, looks infinitely better. The only reason why a live-action movie couldn't look good is if it were rushed. And considering the schedule for most of Disney's live-action remakes, that's very likely the case. I'm not sure if this has always been the case for live-action Disney remakes, but either way, something has to be done. Why not give the creators of the film more time to polish it? That way it won't be looking like this. But it's not just limited to the CGI. The entire movie is literally lifeless compared to the original. And the only scene that even comes close to full of life is with a good chunk of the lyrical songs, including Wild Uncharted Waters, and when they're good scenes, it's not all that frequent. One person who is a fan of the movie and loves the CGI may consider what I said to be nitpicking, but once you take a look at the box office numbers for the photorealistic computer-animated Lion King remake and how it's negatively affecting Disney's future projects, everything really starts to add up. But this isn't limited to the CGI. I've already discussed a lot about the worst song in the entire movie, that being the atrocity known as Scuttlebutt. But it isn't limited to just that song either. For the First Time is a pretty okay song, but it's nothing special. Additionally, a fourth new song, Impossible Child, was going to be added, but was cut for dramaturgical reasons. Luckily, it was added to the public at a later date. But still, the reason behind this is still confusing as hell. And now we get to two songs, known as Poor Unfortunate Souls, and Kiss the Girl. Poor Unfortunate Souls was changed because Disney thought it might make young girls somehow feel that they shouldn't speak out of turn, even though Ursula is the villain and internally says that Ariel will fail, which just makes these changes confusing. And Kiss the Girl was also changed because they were worried that Eric would force himself onto Ariel when that isn't true. To add fuel to the fire, the film's director stated that the song was treating Ariel as an object of desire, encouraging Prince Eric to kiss her without any consideration for whether she actually wants that, even though in the original, it was Ariel who was trying to get Eric to kiss her, but he kept on pulling away because he did not want to take advantage of her. This means that Disney completely misunderstood the intention of the song. Not only is this absolutely unnecessary, but completely disrespectful to the late original lyricist, Howard Ashman, who can't even defend his own works because he died of AIDS on March 14, 1991. And to make matters even worse, the other original composer, Alan Menken, actually supports these changes, making it even worse than it already is, and I'll never understand how Disney makes these baffling decisions for no logical reason, and it has been going on for years. Remember when Disney put out a disastrous overuse of CGI for the abomination of a movie known as A Wrinkle in Time? Or what about the infamously notorious Disney Plus Premier Access? There's a fine line between a good decision and a bad decision, and it seriously boggles my mind that Disney feels the need to make these greedy decisions. For what? There have been many excellent remakes in the past made by other companies, whether it be in the video game, film, or even the television industry. So the question is Disney ignorant? Lazy? Or they just done? It's like if Sony Pictures Animation immediately released Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse on March 29, 2024, only to then say fuck it, and kill it off within less than a week. I just don't get it. Now let's go over a few more minor issues, starting with Queen Selena, the only new major character in the film, and she basically adds nothing to the story and is basically a carbon copy of Triton, but is a human. She doesn't like Eric exploring the sea, just like how Triton didn't want Ariel to go to the surface because of her husband dying out in the ocean. She also goes through a sudden shift in character from an overprotective mom to an accepting mom because she witnesses Eric going out to sea to rescue Ariel, which causes her to have a realization that Eric would do anything for a mermaid. Yet, how does this make her allow Eric to be independent? Oh yeah, Prince Eric's major problem, we'll get to later. And speaking of King Triton, his reasoning for hating humans, because they killed Ariel's mother, Athena, could have been interesting, but is portrayed very poorly as it is barely developed. And on top of that, Athena's backstory was given more development in Ariel's beginning as she was killed by a passing pirate ship, but Triton in the film chose to blame music as the cause of her death because Athena was trying to save their family's music box from being looted by the pirates. As bad as The Little Mermaid, Ariel's beginning was, albeit not as bad as Return to the Sea, it's worth bringing up. And let's get to Ursula, which I gotta admit, Melissa McCarthy made an excellent performance as Ursula, and is easily the acting's saving grace next to Jonah Hauer-King as Prince Eric, but there's one major problem surrounding the character herself. She is somehow pointlessly changed to Triton's sister, who somehow was the cause of Athena's death. Not only that, but she also adds an extra spell too, her potion giving Ariel amnesia. This basically has Ariel forget she has to kiss Eric in 3 days, which, in turn, makes Ursula's transformation into Vanessa very pointless, as it is basically a foolproof plan. And while not shown in the film, the companion book, Guide to Merfolk, explains that Ursula manipulated the humans through a spell that made her look like Athena and capsized their boats, while the real Athena was mistaken for Ursula and was killed by a harpoon. Triton was aware of this and banished the merfolk from visiting the surface while also banishing Ursula. The problem is that why would he have a prejudice against humans because they killed his wife even though he knew they were being manipulated by Ursula into killing her? I don't freaking get it. But the thing is, I'm 100% certain none of this was what Rob Marshall hoped for. The many flaws I mentioned are likely the result of a bunch of overall glaring issues of the entire movie. There's absolutely no denying that Disney has been pumping out live-action remakes, while also sidelining animation as a whole. In 2019, we have the live-action Dumbo remake, the live-action Aladdin remake, the photorealistic computer-animated Lion King remake, Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, and the live-action Lady and the Tramp remake. 4 live-action remakes in the span of only 1 year. In 2020, we had the live-action Mulan remake. In 2022, we got the live-action Pinocchio remake. And in 2023, we now got Peter Pan and Wendy, and the live-action Little Mermaid remake. Ever since a trailer for the live-action Little Mermaid remake's teaser was released on September 9, 2022, the day I burned Cuties, aka the worst movie ever made, I have been incredibly skeptical. There's no way they could make a Little Mermaid remake with an actor that, along with Lily James and Naomi Scott, said that animation was a genre kids enjoying adults endure. And yes, I'm completely aware about the controversy surrounding Ariel in the movie. But even ignoring the controversy, it's just absolutely exhausting. There's just too many recent movies to keep up with. But the question remains, what is the real cause of these live-action remakes? There's a common misconception that Alice in Wonderland from 2010 is the first Disney live-action remake ever made. But the thing is, there are live-action remakes that came before it, such as 101 Dalmatians. In actuality, the real first Disney live-action remake was Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book. No, not the 2016 remake. The remake that was released all the way back in Christmas of 1994. And ironically, that was back when Disney live-action remakes used to be so incredible. Sure, some of them were by no means perfect back then, and were weaker live-action remakes, like 102 Dalmatians, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, and Alice Through the Looking Glass. Among them both 2019 was a terrible movie. Back then, before Alice in Wonderland 2010, Disney live-action remakes weren't that prominent for Disney. What's likely the case is money. Ever since Alice in Wonderland, despite being a decent enough live-action remake, Disney has been pumping out live-action remakes more frequently, although with The Sorcerer's Apprentice, they stopped until Maleficent, which both Maleficent and Cinderella 2015 turned out to be incredible movies. While Maleficent and its sequel, known as Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, a by no means perfect Cinderella 2015 was easily one of the best Disney live-action remakes alongside Beauty and the Beast 2017, despite the latter's flaws. But when Disney really started to mess up with their live-action remakes was with their remake of The Lion King, which in actuality turned out to be a photorealistic, computer-animated movie disguised as a live-action remake. But this downfall isn't just limited to Disney live-action remakes. It's also been apparent with stuff like Ice Age and more recently, DC superhero movies, well, in terms of box office numbers, at least. But here's the thing. Just because a previous movie had an issue, that doesn't make it okay to repeat that issue. If anything, that's even worse. But in the case of Disney live-action remakes, it's a very complicated issue. Disney returned to live-action remakes since Alice in Wonderland, and they really pulled it off in Cinderella 2015 and Beauty and the Beast 2007, but it isn't worth sidelining animation solely for live-action remakes. I understand that Disney is a very lucrative and popular film company. But even if it has to be this way, here's what I don't get. We all know that Cruella released in 2021, and it was a really great live-action Disney remake. But the Disney live-action remakes started sucking again with Disney's live-action Pinocchio remake. And now the downfall Disney is proven even more with this Little Mermaid live-action remake. Why couldn't Disney just delay their Little Mermaid live-action remake to somewhere in 2027, and their live-action Moana and Tangled remakes somewhere in the 2050s decade? It would not only benefit the movies with more development time, but the staff and fans as well, without having the live-action Tangled and Moana remakes be released way too early. There needs to be a change, because the only ones benefiting from this are greedy higher-ups. It's also important to bring up the box office numbers. Despite the movie's glaring issues and the live-action Little Mermaid remake underperforming compared to the other Disney live-action remakes, the movie managed to slightly break even with over $564 million, and it also landed a spot on the top 10 highest-grossing movies of 2023 by the time it came out on digital download on July 25, 2023. You may think that there's now no incentive to improve, but I firmly believe that despite the movie's short-term success, I believe that this movie has already damaged the reputation of Disney even further. Disney's live-action Pinocchio remake and Peter Pan and Wendy were seen as little more than lazy cash grabs. But even though The Little Mermaid clearly had a positive critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, it doesn't change the fact that it released in an appalling state and had the verified audience score be near perfect to cover up the negative reception it was getting. Many have already lost trust in Disney, and likely skipped Haunted Mansion, and will likely skip Wish too.
Oh, you like Disney? You mean the company that completely sidelines animation in favor of their shitty live-action remakes?
This also applied to the Premier Access on Disney+. They made this strategy for releasing films simultaneously in theaters and on their streaming service through a premium feed that they know is greedy, but still use this practice for stuff like Mulan 2020, Raya and the Last Dragon, Cruella, Black Widow, and even Jungle Cruise, all of which are still on the streaming service. It may have been profitable in the short term, it doesn't change the fact that Disney has become even more deceptive with their greed, and this is another reason why I'm heavily concerned that the next animated film known as Wish could potentially become a box office failure. And back on the topic of The Little Mermaid, while it isn't entirely Rob Marshall's fault for how the movie turned out, he's not exactly off the hook either. He could have easily said that the movie is clearly not ready and that Disney can't release it until it's truly a good movie to release, but look what happened. Whether or not the main problem has something to do with the controversy surrounding Ariel, absolutely none of this changes the fact that there's controversy surrounding this entire movie, and that this entire situation should never have even occurred. How Bailey being cast as Ariel is one of the film's most heavily discussed aspects of the movie. However, there's one major problem that isn't discussed nearly as much as it could have been, that manages to go against everything that the original Little Mermaid movie stood for. And all of this could have easily been avoided, had Disney actually cared enough to iron out the flaws. In the original Little Mermaid movie's climax, Ursula then puts on the crown and later on, grows to a monstrous size after Ariel Killflotsam injects him, separating Ariel and Eric in the process, while then gaining full control of the entire ocean. Ursula then creates a giant whirlpool, sucking Ariel in and about to kill her in the process. And then a giant ship came into the whirlpool, and, while it did push Prince Eric deep in the water, it gave Prince Eric enough time and the chance to finally grab onto the ship and climb up onto it. And while Ursula tried to kill Ariel, Eric then got the chance to commandeer a wrecked ship towards Ursula, stabbing her by ramming a splintered Vesper towards her abdomen, killing Ursula in the process. The remake's climax basically plays out the same, but here's the catch. It's not actually Prince Eric who kills Ursula. That's right. Prince Eric is completely undermined and straight up disrespected in this movie. While Prince Eric is technically in the climax where he piloted the ship to stab Ursula was changed to Ariel doing the same here. Ariel literally steers the ship, despite not having any legs at all to do so like Eric had, and is the one to kill Ursula instead. So basically, the climax completely swapped Eric and Ariel's major roles in the climax for seemingly no good reason, which is the movie's way of saying fuck you to Prince Eric. And afterwards, Eric then returns home, instead of passing out like in the original, and in the end, it was at the moment where I realized that in the climax, Prince Eric actually served no purpose this whole time. And this major issue easily could have been avoided if the climax was changed into what I'm about to say right now. It easily would have made the climax so much better if Prince Eric was the one who pilots a ship to kill Ursula, like in the original, while Ariel rescues Selena with King Triton caught in the whirlpool. That way, it would have shown both Triton and Selena that not all humans and Merfolk are bad creatures to one another. It is such a simple solution to a massive problem that essentially just defeats the entire purpose of the Little Mermaid's entire existence as a whole. This is easily as big of an oversight as not being able to share levels in Super Mario Maker for Nintendo 3DS. And that 3DS port of an otherwise good video game was released all the way back in 2016, literally 1 year after its original Wii U version, for fucking crying out loud. Don't get me wrong, Prince Eric is still the best character in this entire movie by far, but this climax of the movie not only disrespects the fuck out of him, but it also further cements what is overall a lifeless, no care putting to it, embarrassing, baffling, unappealing, and utterly pointless experience. To sum everything up in one sentence, what you're essentially getting from this live-action Little Mermaid remake is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Most of the soundtrack, with some notable exceptions, are great. And Prince Eric is easily the best part of this entire movie. But that's it. There's absolutely no real reason to watch this movie, especially considering the original still exists. Sure, the Barbie movie may not be the best in terms of quality, but it's definitely the Super Mario Bros. Movie compared to the live-action Little Mermaid remake in terms of literally everything. And do you really want to know how bad this truly is? Even Peter Pan at least had some passion put into it. Yes, while Peter Pan is still a bad movie on its own, at the very least, it was considered a passion project from David Lowery. And this is especially apparent since he was a huge fan of the original and wanted to make it for a new generation, even if it failed miserably. But here's the thing. Just because a prior film that came before turned out to be bad, that doesn't mean that future movies should repeat this issue. If anything, that ends up becoming a pattern of one bad film to another. In fact, if you compare this decade gap to another, it's very clear which one is strikingly more positive. If you take a look at how Super Mario was handled in the film industry outside of Japan, he made an absolutely horrible start in the film industry back in 1993, especially to the point where this caused Nintendo to become very wary of creating films, up until 30 years later, when they released what would eventually become the best movie ever made, that being the Super Mario Bros. Movie, which also made over $1 billion at the box office worldwide. Also, I saw the movie in theaters on April 6, 2023, opening weekend. So this begs the question. How on earth is it, in terms of going to the movies, I end up going from Super Mario Odyssey to Nintendo Switch Sports within 2 months? Short answer, this wasn't intended. I have no doubt in my mind that Disney knew that their live-action Little Mermaid remake would suck, but decided to release it to make a lot of money anyways. It's easy to assume that this live-action Little Mermaid remake was rushed, but let's think about it. Production of the movie started in 2016, and it had a decently long production time. What I assumed happened in the middle of production is probably this.
Fuck this show! Fuck this show! Fuck this show!
There's also a crucial aspect that needs to be brought up going deeper into this movie. Despite its major issues, it managed to get a decent 67% Rotten Tomatoes critics score and a verified audience score of a near-perfect 94%. When I first looked at it, I thought that many people were proven wrong by the movie. There were basically some Disney live-action remakes that also had a positive audience score, despite some of the live-action remakes with positive audience scores being bad movies. I had absolutely no idea that this actually meant that Rotten Tomatoes actually decided to cover up the negative reception of the movie, just to fool people into actually seeing the movie. And I wasn't the only one to notice that. Opinions are subjective, but good movies are not. You have to mention potential flaws. They may not affect or bother you, but it's important viewers are aware of them. It's clear that Disney has specific guidelines when it comes to movies, and will kill off movies if they end up box office bombs. What happened to Strange World? It got released on Disney Plus only a month after its theatrical release. The reason why I'm so heavily critical of Disney nowadays is because of their terrible decision. And I'll never forget how gang ripped off I felt after watching this live-action Little Mermaid remake. If you ever review any movies, you have to bring up potential flaws just like you would for strengths for good movies. Not even bringing up the awful CGI and the undermining of Prince Eric as a hero is downright irresponsible as a reviewer. Not to mention, this live-action Little Mermaid remake is also why I stopped trusting future Disney movies unless I'm fully confident in them. I completely skipped Elemental and Haunted Mansion because I felt scammed after watching The Little Mermaid. But I am eventually planning to watch Elemental, and I will share my thoughts on that movie through a community post. I want to be excited for stuff like Wish. I really do. But I'm so worried it would end up just like Lightyear and Strange World. And don't forget, Disney's live-action Little Mermaid remake is a theatrically released movie. Remember when Disney used to release low-budget films back then? Films like Bambi are great, but it had an easily low budget because of the financial strain the studio was under due to various issues, especially World War II. If Disney's live-action Little Mermaid remake actually added more stuff to make the movie better, like better lighting, and if they especially changed the climax to where Prince Eric kills Ursula like in the original, while Ariel saves Selena with King Triton in the whirlpool, I might be singing a slightly different tune. But this live-action remake is in absolutely no way, shape, or form worth watching. But is this film worse than Cuties? No. Not a fucking chance. Because as disastrous as this live-action Little Mermaid remake really is, there are at least some redeeming qualities in there, and it still looked like a pretty harmless film. Whereas with Cuties, it's literally just an unwatchable child pornography fest that literally consists of little girls terrorking. But by absolutely no means will it make this Little Mermaid live-action remake good. Remember when we used to dream about what the future of Disney could be like? Now, we're left with live-action remakes that have all the charm sucked out of their originals that literally came out decades ago. Why reach for the stars when you can just lower the bar, and that is absolutely disappointing. But on the bright side, I can always go back to better movies anytime I want, and I will continue to for years to come. Disney's live-action adaptation of The Little Mermaid was an absolute disaster. But in the meantime, I'm just gonna relax, rewatch both the Super Mario Bros. Movie and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse on repeat, and have a good time. Who in the Matrix fuck are you?
I'm Lucas Evans. And as you can see, I'm a really big movie guy. And from what I'm seeing here, this sounds like a really good movie you're watching right now.
Why yes. It is a good movie. In fact, my favorite movie of all time. This right here is a Super Mario Bros. Movie. And this, along with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, are the two movies I'm planning to rewatch as of right now.
Wow, that's amazing, bro. Oh, and speaking of movies, have you watched the newest Little Mermaid movie? Trust me, you'd love it if you watch it.
Yeah, I watched it already. And honestly, it was an absolute disaster. Prince Eric is incredible in the movie, but all the passion from the original is beaten to death with a flaming sledgehammer.
Oh, Slash. Why the long face? There is so much more to the movie than whatever negative aspects you have to spit out every day. I bet you probably hate the movie because you have too much nostalgia for the original.
Okay, dude. Disney can remake whatever movie they want, sure. But when they take the very movie and suck all of the charm out of the original and make a bunch of unnecessary changes that didn't need to be there to begin with, that just ruins what the movie is going for. Oh, but I know exactly what's in your mind.
Mortal Kombat 2021 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 weren't exactly good movies.
In your view, so every movie should be competing on who gets to be the worst movie ever made, when I already know it's been constantly made clear that Cuties is the worst movie ever made, and Mortal Kombat 2021 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 are amazing but not perfect movies.
I was disappointed by Mortal Kombat 2021 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, sure, but I always need to watch them all with an open heart, because I'm always looking for more to enjoy out of movies, even when it's a Disney live-action remake.
He will eat you for breakfast.
I don't know, man. I mean, the entire experience with the Little Mermaid live-action remake was a complete and utter waste of time. How in the absolute matrix fuck do you release a Little Mermaid movie with all the passion completely beaten to death and tossed away in the trash with a flaming katana, and that completely defeats the purpose of its own very existence?
No, that's a let's see what you're made of.
Okay, fine, we fucking get it now. You don't like the movie. Oh, how disappointing. I already planned my movie watch night for the exact movie you mentioned, which was supposed to be scheduled this coming Wednesday. By the way, until you fucked it all over, guess I'm gonna have to announce a different movie. Perhaps one that's coming soon?
Oh hell to the fucking no. This shit can't go on any fucking longer. I'm going to find the source and put an end to this once and for all.
Oh shit!
Surprise, motherfucker!
Are you freaking killing me?
Daughters of the seven seas, I welcome news from all of your waters. Tamika, Perla, it's so good to see you. Caspia, Indira, it fills my heart to have you all here. Mala, Karina.
Don't worry, original Ariel. I'll save you from your imposter. Yes, my animated counterpart. Let's kill that spotlight-stealing little traitor, once and for all.
Then we are breaking up right now!
Flawless victory.
Fatality.
In conclusion, Disney's live-action Little Mermaid remake is easily one of the blandest, most underwhelming, most pathetic, and easily the worst Disney live-action remake ever made as of today. I am absolutely appalled with how this remake turned out. Even with Peter Pan and Wendy, one of the worst Disney Plus original movies ever made, I was still able to find some passion put into it. This was especially apparent when I found out that this movie turned out to be David Lowery's passion project, since he was a fan of the original Peter Pan movie and wanted to make it for a new generation. Even if this film failed miserably, it's worth bringing up. You could also say the same for Tom and Jerry 2021, and even that, despite being a mediocre best movie, it was still a passion project from Tim Story. But with Disney's live-action Little Mermaid remake, the closest thing you're getting to passion is with Ariel singing, and Prince Eric as a whole, in which while Halle Bailey's casting was already met with some controversy, Prince Eric was completely disrespected in the climax anyways, so at this point, it doesn't really matter. So if it wasn't clear already, this is easily the worst Disney movie I have ever seen in my life. At least up until the live-action Snow White remake releases. I can still find some good within the movie with stuff like Prince Eric, but nothing past that. This movie is definitely the final nail in the coffin for Disney, cementing it as a company I'll have to go back to the older movies to enjoy. Any attempt at a future Disney movie from now on, aside from Pixar and anything from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, won't even necessarily get a whiff of interest from me. Not only that, but a movie like this also completely worries me for the future of Disney even more. Movies like this aren't worth seeing in theaters, let alone at all. In fact, the only reason why I begrudgingly chose to waste my time on this movie was to rant on it. Most of you guys watching this video didn't even bother going to see the movie at all to begin with. In the end, it doesn't matter how the future of Disney ends up. The creation of Disney's live-action Little Mermaid remake didn't matter either. Because despite everything, Disney's photorealistic computer-animated Lion King remake reached over $1.663 billion at the box office and became the highest-grossing animated movie of all time. Do you realize how insane that is? Even the Super Mario Bros. Movie, the best movie ever made, despite being one of the top 20 highest-grossing movies of all time with over $1.3 billion at the box office, couldn't beat that or Frozen 2. Truly a shame, to be honest. But over the years, Disney has been showcasing that no matter how bad or poorly done a movie really is, it's still gonna sell a lot of money, underperforming or not. And, honestly, why would they want to try? If you want to watch this live-action Little Mermaid remake on Disney Plus and that's your first time watching the movie, that's fine. But seeing it in theaters, along with the Snow White remake, is absolutely concerning. But really, why on earth would anyone want to waste their time defending this crap anyways? Movies, like with video games, can create meaningful experiences. They can also leave an impact on your life. And Disney happens to be a movie studio that has been loved by many generations, and is often tied to childhood memories. But sometimes, what happens is that they cannot detach a movie studio from their own personality. But sometimes, there are some people who see criticism of Disney as criticism of them. The Super Mario Bros. Movie is easily my favorite movie of all time. But even if some people found the movie to be not incredible or even found it to be straight up bad, I wouldn't throw a fit or make such a big deal out of it. I would disagree, sure. Maybe I'd even explain my point of view. But by absolutely no means would I get upset over it. It's actually interesting to hear different takes on certain media. I also find it quite intriguing hearing about why some people like Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, even though I consider it to be the worst Mario game of all time. And this is where some need to understand that criticism or denouncing a series, game, or even movie is only that, and not a personal criticism of you. People usually criticize because they care about a certain type of media or franchise. If I didn't at all love Disney back in my childhood, I wouldn't say anything at all. But it's absolutely disappointing seeing a movie studio I once loved collapse so hard due to corporate greed. As fans, we deserve better. And considering Disney is one of the biggest movie studios in the world, there's absolutely no reason for some of their movies to end up as bad as they do. And we shouldn't be complacent about it. I think it's fair to say that Disney definitely can improve. But is it likely? It very well could. But unfortunately, it would likely have to go beyond just vocal feedback. Like I said before, there are a lot of Disney movies that have sold insanely well at the box office. And it's clear that Disney has absolutely no shame in releasing a live-action remake that sucks all the charm out of the original. But whenever they did so with The Lion King, they still got their reward. It really would come down to not watching the movies at all, or simply just pirating them. The more ideal way to see the movie before digital download without having to see it in theaters is through archive.org. But you see, most of the people who love the movie aren't even aware of all of the issues surrounding the movie. But hey, nostalgia exists, I guess. There have been a lot of people who only stick to Disney movies, and that's about it. And it just makes me think they are missing out on a lot of movies outside of the Disney bubble. At this point, I have just accepted that Disney will never get better. The quality of Disney's live-action Little Mermaid remake is so low that it's more than likely that their live-action Snow White remake will be worse. It's difficult, but I've accepted that Disney will likely remain as bad as they are now, and I'm honestly numb to the disappointment. I hope that one day, things will change. But I'm not expecting it anytime soon. In the end, Disney is a movie studio I used to love that had a lot of movies I truly enjoyed and can always go back to. But until things get better, there are way too many great movies to enjoy, and it's not even worth watching movies I don't even find entertaining to begin with. I will absolutely not be rewatching the Little Mermaid live-action remake, nor will I be seeing the live-action Snow White remake in theaters, and eventually, it will have come to the breaking point where I'm pretty much done with Disney until we see drastic improvement. I'll still share my thoughts on future movies and such, but I feel like it's best for me to move on. And if you feel similar to how I do, don't be afraid to do the same. If you want some incredible movies, there's no shortage. Some examples include Spider-Man, Across the Spider-Verse, and the Super Mario Bros. Movie. I've rewatched the Super Mario Bros. Movie a countless amount of times now, and I still remained engaged throughout. And it's also getting a sequel. I definitely recommend that movie and Across the Spider-Verse. I hope Disney can eventually live up to what they once were, but in its current state, I've unfortunately decided to just accept defeat. I didn't want it to be this way, but it's just not worth the energy being so furious over Disney anymore, because in the end, it's going to be inevitable if things remain the way they are.